with a rare and something that is almost unheard of, with the opposition praising the Prime Minister. And this has happened as far as the winds of change, or our diplomat Shashi Tharoor seems to be praising India's foreign policy and stance on Ukraine. Well, in February, in the year 2022, it was the same Shashi Tharoor who was one of the few parliamentarians to criticize India's position on Russia-Ukraine conflict. He wanted India rather to condemn Russia's aggression, but India, however, maintained a stand of peace and dialogue, and that is the message, saying that this is not an era of war. 3 years later, Congress MP has no qualms in admitting that he is still wiping the egg off his face. He has graciously accepted that Modi's policy has meant that India has a prime minister who can hug both the presidents of Ukraine and of Russia just 2 weeks apart and be accepted in both places. Not just that, he even said that India is in a position where the country can make a difference to lasting peace if it was required, in ways that very few countries would be able to do so.
Yes, I'm still wiping the egg off my face, because I was the one person in the parliamentary debate who actually criticized the Indian position at the time, back in February 22, on the well-worn grounds that Espen will understand, because he and I talked about all this in my UN days, that there was a violation of the UN Charter, that there had been a violation of the principle of the inviolability of borders, of the sovereignty of a member state, namely Ukraine, and we had always stood for the inadmissibility of the use of force to settle international disputes, and all of those principles, I said, had been violated by one party, and we should have condemned it. Well, a couple of years later, 3 years later, it does look like I'm the one with egg on my face, because clearly the policy has meant that India has actually a prime minister who can hug both the president of Ukraine and the president of Moscow 2 weeks apart and be accepted in both places. And therefore, India is in a position where it can make a difference to a lasting peace, if it was so required, in ways that very few countries would be able to.
Well, the question now remains if the stance that has been taken by Mr. Shashi Tharoor himself, being a former diplomat who has a very well and good understanding when it comes to foreign affairs, will this stand also be taken by Rahul Gandhi and the Congress party? Because this is a question that the BJP is now asking, which are happily welcoming this candid confession by Mr. Shashi Tharoor.
Congress MP Dr. Shashi Tharoor has made a candid confession and an admission that he has egg on his face for the stand that was taken on the Russia-Ukraine war, that Modi ji's policy, the foreign policy of Bharat, was eventually correct, where India can now stand shoulder to shoulder both with United States and Russia, with Russia and Ukraine, hug Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, speak to both of them. Today, Shashi Tharoor ji has admitted this, perhaps at his own peril, because we don't know how Rahul Gandhi will feel about it. Congress should also admit that it was wrong. It should admit that it criticizes policies, especially policies of Rashtra-niti. But unfortunately, the Congress will not show the same magnanimity as Dr. Tharoor has. In fact, they may even act on him. Who knows?